Hello, welcome to another podcast of Akiona Law. Within this podcast, we talk about all things that intersect in the areas of family law and divorce. And with me today, I'm very excited. I have a return guest, Karen Bonnell. Karen is a retired psychotherapist and a psychiatric nurse practitioner, retired. She's also a former divorce coach and mediator. Now she is a consultant, a writer, and a mentor. Her books include the Co-Parenting Handbook, the Parenting Plan Workbook, and the Stepfamily Handbook. She also has a video series about the Parenting Plan Workbook, and you can also follow her on a YouTube channel. Karen, what's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's just Coach Karen. It's my name. So
Okay.
and anyone can access it right from the website. If they go on to the on the books page, there's all kinds of resources, Lonnie, including podcasts like the one we're doing will definitely show up there, and as well as the YouTube channel and the books.
And Karen's website is www.karen, Karen, S as in Sam, S as in Sue, okay, Bonnell, and that's spelled BONNELL.com. So just type in Karen S. Bonnell. Did I say it right?
You're doing great. Thank you so much. Yes, KarenSBonnell.com. And honestly, if you type in Karen Coach Kirkland, you're going to find me as well. It's pretty easy just because I've been at this for a while.
Yeah. You have been at this for a while, and I think I could remember that as well. Karen Coach Kirkland. Okay, so we're going to get started today, everyone. We're going to talk about Karen's Stepfamily Handbook, which is great. It was fantastic. I'm not in that situation. I've been married for, I don't even know. Wait, let me think. What year is this? What are we, 22? I'm going to make 22 years. But even reading that, I thought it was eye-opening and just like, wow, so informative, just great. But before we want to dive into that, I want to get into what you're doing right now, because you kind of transition from being a divorce coach and a mediator to doing consulting work. And what exactly is the consulting work that you're doing?
Thanks, Lonnie, for the chance just to kind of chat about that. I'm offering to parents, and to professionals, but for parents, I'm really offering what I call the one-time consult. And that is an opportunity to sit down for 90 minutes and really get your most urgent questions addressed. So 90 minutes, let's go. We're going to rock and roll. Okay. We're going to get really right down into building that platform, whether that's for people who are just initiating a separation and divorce, and they really want to talk about things like, how do we tell our kids, and how do we choose divorce professionals? How would we find Lonnie, for example, if we need, if we need an attorney who's going to care as much about the outcome for our children as we do, because that's important. So it might be around separation and divorce. It might be around people who are post-decree and they really want to get co-parenting right. They're through their divorce, but they realize, gosh, we're just missing some skills, or it's a little rocky, or we can't sort out some conflict. We need some ideas. Yeah. Then we do co-parenting. And then the third area that, as you know, and you've already mentioned, is stepwise, which is stepping into step family, which starts with, hey, I'm a parent, I'm dating, or, oh my gosh, I'm dating a parent. I have no idea what that means. They have children. So those are the three sort of buckets, if you will, that are tailored to the needs of each parent or parenting pair that seeks a consult.
Okay, so let me see if I got these three buckets right. So the first bucket would essentially be, and I'm just kind of thinking this of a client that reached out to me and basically said, hey, I would like to break the divorce news to my husband. Do you have a resource for me? Like how can we tell the kids? So that'd be kind of one bucket.
Right. We'd call that divorce well. If I want to divorce well, that's in that bucket. Yeah.
And then the next bucket would be, and this comes up a lot of times too, there's some, how do you say this? In the world of co-parenting, there's some bumps, and there may be some hostility where you have another co-parent that's extremely reactive. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with someone who's always kind of just in this accusatory, blaming, critical mode, then they could reach out to you as well.
Absolutely. And we call that co-parent strong. And that might be co-parenting, co-parent strong, divorce vow, co-parent strong. Here's the thing. Sometimes people still will work together. That co-parent who is being hard to get along with, they actually want to do it better, but they kind of feel like that other person needs to do some things different. Sometimes I work with people as a pair in that particular one-time consult. Sometimes it's individually. Someone may be dealing with a co-parent who is absolutely unwilling to work together. Well, then we need strategies for that too, don't we? So either one.
And then the last bucket. So we're going to repeat those two buckets. Divorce well is number one. Number two is co-parent strong. And the third bucket would be stepping forward.
Stepwise.
Stepwise.
Yeah, we're going to use wisdom, our wisdom. Now, what do we know about restructuring families? We're going to stepwise, one step at a time, into that new family structure that we long for. We want to fall in love. We want to have a sense of family, but it's not necessarily with our children's other parent.
Okay, I love those. I love those terminologies, Karen. So you've got them, folks. You've got one bucket is divorce well, so you can talk to Karen about that. The second bucket you can reach out to Karen for is number two, co-parent strong. The last bucket that you can reach out to Karen about also is number three, stepwise. And speaking of stepwise, let's get into the Stepfamily Handbook that you've written. Again, oh my gosh, I don't know. It just kind of I don't even know how to say this. It just kind of blew my mind, just kind of like moving forward. This is what you need to consider, parents. And even if you're not in a relationship right now, right? Let's just say the parents just let's just say they're 8 months into the divorce process and it's messy and they're trying to figure out a final parenting plan. I can see a parent saying, why do I need to deal with this now? I'm not even going to think about dating. But it's important that they do think about it now. There's just so many tools there.
You know, it's really true, Lonnie. And honestly, just touching on that, when we're forming a parenting plan and we're kind of, just sort of up to our neck in our current family, we're often thinking about, well, what are we going to do when it's just the four of us? It's you, me, and the two children, right?
Right.
And so one of my jobs is to help people get their head up just enough to look a little bit further toward the horizon. Because guess what? In 2 to 5 years, one or both of those parents is more than likely, this is research, by the way, more than likely to be in a new relationship. And that person may or may not have children, but they may or may not have a parenting plan. But if we're not designing a parenting plan with the awareness that this original four may include other people at some point, there's going to be a lot of strife, conflict, and disappointment down the road. And I'll just give you a really quick example. If we toggle together every Christmas Eve and every Christmas, in other words, you're going to have the kids on Christmas Eve and I'm going to have the kids on Christmas morning, and then we're going to flip that the next year.
Yeah.
2 to 5 years down the road, we're both in new families. And guess what? No other families are really functioning like that. Our children aren't having a smooth and easy experience of Christmas in either of their families, either family with their mom or their family with their other parent, whatever the case may be. But we didn't think about that. We didn't think down the road what that might look like when we were settled into a new sense of family. And I encourage parents to at least be aware that within 2 to 5 years, one or both of them will recouple.
Yeah.
And that matters.
That's an interesting topic. What would you suggest in terms of, because it is quite common in parenting plans to alternate something like that. So what would your suggestion be then?
Yeah, alternating, definitely. I think it's really important that both parents get to celebrate the important and significant cultural and religious holidays with their children. So we're talking about, letting children rest into a full arc of maybe, say, the Christmas season with one parent. So half of that midwinter break in 1 year, and then they can rest in with their other parent the following year for the entire Christmas season. And that way kids aren't being pushed between pillar and post, right? Now, this isn't to say that in the first couple of years, when there really isn't someone else that we need to think about or other children that we need to consider, then I'm not inviting you to say, hey, I've got the kids this year for Christmas, Lonnie, and I am going to be in town with them. I'm wondering, would you like them for Christmas dinner? Would you like to come and get them at, 1 in the afternoon and have them overnight until the 26th? Would that be interesting to you? We could still have that conversation. I'm just not putting it in a legal parenting plan, because in 3 or 4 more years, I want to go to Park City with the kids because my new beloved, their family Christmas is in Park City because everybody skis. Well, my kids can't go if we've somehow legislated this other story. Does that
Wow.
make sense?
No, that makes sense. And I think that's really powerful. It's so hard in the beginning when, like, I love what you said in terms of when we're doing a parenting plan or people are going through divorce, or they're only seeing right now because it's just so hard to function. You can only focus on right now. But I definitely hear what you're saying about kind of putting on that forward lens when you do get involved in a relationship, how it is more beneficial to maybe, instead of breaking up that Christmas break in half, because that's what parents all want to do at that initial separation. Like, I can't be apart from my kids. I need to break it up. I need to have either the first half of the winter break, the Christmas break with the children, or at least the second half, so one parent gets Christmas Eve for that first half, and then the other parent gets Christmas Day and so forth. It's just so hard to, and I do agree when I do like alternating the entire Christmas break, because then you have a huger chunk of time with the kids. It's just, I feel like in the beginning of the divorce, it's hard for people to kind of accept that, because I think they're stuck on the fact that I won't see my kids for this Christmas, something like that.
And you know what? We're mixing a little bit of apples and oranges. So we're just going to tease that apart for a minute since you brought it up. If we literally divide the break in half, which is very common, and I do support that actually, because it's 17 overnights. It's a long stay. Now, my international parents, someone who needs to go to South Africa for that break because that's where the family is, we're not dividing it, or we're at least setting it up that they can claim the entire break to make that trip to South Africa. But that's kind of the exception, not the rule, right? But if we literally divide that break in half, Lonnie, then we have Christmas and Christmas Eve is fully in the first half. So our transition day is either the 26th, 27th, or 28th. So we can still each have half of the break to do something special. Somebody gets all of Christmas, somebody gets all of New Year's. We reverse that the following year. What we don't do, or what I encourage parents not to do, is make the transition on Christmas Day or at the end of Christmas Eve. That's where we get into trouble. Make the transition no earlier than the 26th. It's more likely going to be the 27th, sometimes the 28th, depending on when the school break starts.
Yeah.
Right. And that's old technology. That breaking the break in half was, let's split Christmas and Christmas Eve in half, call that the transition day. It doesn't work. That's what doesn't work. Yeah.
No, I hear you definitely. Sometimes I prefer it more when parenting plans use the halfway point of the child's winter break as that split.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, no, and I hear you too. It definitely makes sense too as the kids get older and they get more independent, and they do start learning things like skiing or snowboarding and just that ability to take trips for a much longer time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So gosh, going back into the Stepfamily Handbook though, one thing I wanted to talk about was, and I think this is why it's important for people to take a look at it now, even if you're not even considering dating, is that you bring up in chapter 4, strengthen your relationship skills. And this is what I love about this is that strengthening your relationship skills can be used at any point. And the advice that you give, Karen, is so spot on. It could be used for someone who's married, who's not even thinking about divorce. It could be used for people who are going through a divorce right now and I need to know how do I improve my relationship skills with the other parents? So we're going to dive in because you brought up 5 really good skills and I just pretty much like highlighted everything. And I'm like, when I'm in a fight with my husband, would it look weird if I like pull up that highlight and I read it while we're in there? Wow, I'm actually in the fight, because one of them is this. Okay, the first one is calm yourself in the storm. You say, take a deep breath, which is so hard to do, but so important.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Calm yourself in the storm. You know what's really hard is when we're overexcited or when we're triggered. That's a common word, right? Triggered. We actually stop using our prefrontal cortex. We start to function from a more primitive part of our brain, the part of us that is going to fight or is going to flee or is going to get scared or is going to over adapt. And now suddenly I'm just going to abdicate all of my needs. None of those are functional ways to have a difficult conversation. So as soon as we engage a conversation from a place of being triggered or being dysregulated in some way, we're already off and running to the races. We're already, we just sort of fell off the communication cliff, if you will. So our first step is always to say, let's get into a state of calm. Even if that means I have to say to you, you know what, Lonnie? I am so frustrated with you right now. I've got to walk away. I've got to pull myself together so I can come back to you with my whole self to solve this problem, because that's what I want. I want to solve this problem with you. So always alert someone.
Do I have to say that calmly or can I yell that?
You can yell that. You can yell that, but you're going to mean it and you're going to turn around and walk away. And then you are going to come back because you said you would. And here's the thing. Don't ever walk away, slam down the phone, go out the front door without assuring your beloved that you know you are out to lunch. You need to go collect yourself and you will be back. This is not an attempt to really hurt someone by sort of projecting the idea that they're going to lose your love. That's not what it's about. I am not okay with having this conversation now, and I need to get okay so that I can be back and be present to you.
I love this part, calm yourself in the storm. What I tend to do is I take a breath and I close my eyes.
Yes.
Like patience.
Yeah. And decrease input. When we close our eyes, this is a very common and useful strategy, by the way. And we slow down our breathing, we close our eyes. We might even put our head down a little bit so that we can diminish what we're hearing. That actually helps, like this, right? And we center in our heart. I'm looking down into my heart. I want to center in my core. Now I can come back to you and say, you are really mad at me. And I'm really sorry. Let's talk about it. Right? Now we can have a conversation.
Let's practice doing that right now, everyone. Let's just take a deep breath, close your eyes and look down and just pause a moment. I feel better already. That's amazing.
It's a way to come home to yourself. And you can use that when your toddler is refusing to get their diaper changed. Or your 4-year-old will not put on their shoes. I promise you, it's so versatile.
Or when your teenager is sassing you back because you asked them to take out the rubbish.
Exactly.
Oh, goodness. And then your next skill is listen to understand. And in this, you mentioned how when we listen, we're not really listening because we're thinking about our response, or we're judging or criticizing. So I thought that was really important. Listen to understand.
Right. It's funny. We often feel like if I really understand you, then you're going to think I agree with you. And those two things are completely unrelated. My ability to truly understand you says to you that I get what's going on for you. I really get you. And when I love someone, Lonnie, I want them to know I get them. Whether it's my kids or, a partner or a spouse or whatever, or a colleague, if you were to be upset with me, I would want you to know before anything else that I get you. So when I listen to understand, I try and close off all those extra voices in my own head that want to fight with you or defend myself or justify what I did or whatever the case may be. I want to shut those down. And I want to say to myself, what is going on with Lonnie? I really want to get this. So I'm listening to understand. And the way that I'm going to let you know that I understand is I'm going to feed it back to you. I'm going to say, gosh, Lonnie, you're really mad at me. for whatever you're really mad at me for. And you know what you're going to do when I feed that back to you in just that way? Notice what I'm saying. You're really mad at me. You're really scared. You're really whatever. Do you know what you're going to do? You're going to do this. If I've
Not
got you, if I've got the bullseye, if I have really understood you, you're going to go like this. And if I am out to lunch, missing the mark, whatever, you know what you're going to do? You're going to go, no. And then I'm going to say, Lonnie, try it again. Because it's really important to me that I get you. I want to understand what's going on.
right.
And we'll try it again. So yes, listen to understand. You know, one of the most significant human experiences that any of us can have is to be seen, to be understood. Incredibly powerful medicine. We don't
That
want
is
to forget it.
powerful. Everybody wants to be seen and to be understood.
That's right.
Wow. And I think that goes hand in hand with your next point, listen to understand. Your relationship skill, number 3, is switch out of defensiveness.
Right.
Tough, you're being attacked.
Yeah, you might be being attacked. Someone might be really mad at you or really scared about something you did or wants to send you into justifying your existence, right? And so I'm going to switch out of being defensive because first I'm listening to understand. I'm going to make sure that you know I understand you and that I get you, that I see you. And then I'm going to ask you, Lonnie, can I tell you what was going on my side? I'm going to invite you now.
Oh,
I'm going to invite you to prepare yourself to listen and understand, right? I'm not just going to come back swinging because guess what? You're not prepared for me to come back swinging. I'm just going to get a triggered listener on the other side who's going to defend themselves. So
right.
that transition when I move out of defensiveness is to say to you, all right, are you ready to hear from my side? Can I share with you what was going on? For me, it's a question. Because if you were to say to me, no, I don't care what was going on for you, well, then there's no point in going forward.
So for example, it could be like, I hear that you're really upset when I was late in picking up the kids. Can I explain my side?
Right.
Something like
And the
that.
person might say, well, sure. Why were you late? Again, for the umpteen thousandth time, right? And then you're just going to take a breath and then go, here's what happened.
Here's what happened. I was on a phone call. It was a work emergency. I thought I could end it in time, but I didn't. And I just was stuck and torn because this person needed my input to solve this problem. I didn't know what to do.
Right. And you know what else? Here's what else you're going to say. And I realize that impacted you. I realize that by me being late to pick up the kids, I impacted your schedule. I screwed up your plans. And you know what? I get that that's not okay and inconvenient. And for that, I apologize. I will continue to work at doing better.
Wow. Right. Because then you used it. Because then you just didn't end it about me. Well, this is what my schedule is like. You then tell that person, I understand how it impacted your schedule. And I apologize for that. I apologize for inconveniencing you.
That's right.
That's not a sign. And I think I struggle with this too, in terms of like, admitting wrong is vulnerability. And that's different. That's difficult because when you're vulnerable, I almost kind of see it as a sign of weakness because people can hurt you. And then I'm learning and understanding that being vulnerable is actually a sign of strength.
It absolutely is a sign of strength. It's also the opportunity to rebuild trust and to rebuild a kind of, I want to say intimacy, but I don't mean romantic intimacy. I mean human intimacy, the ability to really get each other, to feel connected, to realize that, you know what, we're parents together for these kids. And there's no advantage for me to take advantage of you. I don't want to do that. And I realized I did do that today. When I stayed on that call, when I should have been picking up the kids, I took advantage of your goodwill.
Oh,
I did. I took advantage of it, right? I just took it. I didn't ask you if I could be late. I just took it.
Just took it, yeah.
Right. And so we have to really own how we're impacting one another, particularly in co-parenting. We have to appreciate that the kind of things that we might have done during a marriage that were acceptable, right?
Right.
Because we were married, those rules don't apply anymore. This is a business relationship. I don't just take things from you. I don't just assume that you're going to do things for me without asking.
Yeah, that's powerful right there. You can't make those same assumptions or presumptions that you did during the marriage.
Right.
And I think it just goes back to where we want to be seen and heard. And I think that goes to your next relationship skill. Number 4 is balance 5 positives for 1 negative.
Exactly.
Which I love. Yeah.
This is with our children. This is with our beloveds. And, keep in mind that these 5 skills were written in the Stepfamily Handbook for couples who are just starting to date. We're saying, hey, before you become a stepfamily, before you get kids involved, really make sure you sharpen these skills, because guess what? In a stepfamily, you're going to need every single one of them. You are really going to need them. Now, I would argue, and you know this, Lonnie, we need this in every intimate relationship. And again, romantic or otherwise, any important relationship, these 5 skills apply. So 5 positives for every negative is for me to remember that when you drop the kids off and you remember to put in the goggles and do all the things that you do, and maybe you've done a little extra this time, you've actually picked up an additional set of flip-flops for me, water shoes for the kids, and you've just said, hey, I put an extra pair of water shoes in the bag. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to make sure that I appreciate you. That's a positive. How many negatives in a co-parenting relationship or in any intimate partnership are we quick to judge the things that somebody does wrong? And we forget to say to our beloved, who has made us a beautiful meatloaf dinner, even if meatloaf is not our favorite, to say, I just really appreciate the time and effort you put into making dinner tonight. Right? Those simple things are those 5 positives that are going to outweigh the occasional time where we're going to say, what the heck, right? What went wrong? Or I don't want you to do X, right? And it's habit. It's just a habit. We teach our kids to say please and thank you. We teach our kids to be appreciative, and we often don't do it ourselves.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We don't.
We often take for granted the people that we care about.
That's a good point. We do often take for granted people that we care about, no appreciation, but I think it goes back again where people want to be seen and understood. And that's where the appreciation comes in for the little things as well. And the phrase that pops in my mind is be slow to judge or criticize, but quick to praise.
There you go. And that's always a very good habit of life with anyone and everyone. Could be this person at the store who's helping you check out that maybe is a little befuddled. It's like, whoa, be careful. This person doesn't need more criticism. Maybe they need a little extra positive today, right?
And I think especially too, one point to remember too, I know in terms of the Stepfamily Handbook, that's how this is written. But I think what you also said too, the balance of 5 positives for the negative also applies to relationships with children.
Yes,
as well.
Absolutely.
Because it's so easy, I think, sometimes as parents just to kind of, almost come down on the kids on what they're not doing instead of just praising them for what they are doing.
There's an old parenting adage, Lonnie, that says catch children doing what's right. And so what we often do is we stay quiet when kids are doing the right thing, like they're busily doing their homework, right? And they're just like, la, la, la. We just don't say a thing, right? Yeah. Instead of walking over, little peck on the head, little kiss on the top of their head, just say, I'm so proud of you. You're handling this in such a lovely, independent way. Walk away. It's not a 21 gun salute. It's just an acknowledgement.
And even if you give them a peck on the head and they're like, Mom, what are you doing? Go away. You're bothering me.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. That's a teenager's response. That's exactly right. Then you know that you've done exactly the right thing for a 14-year-old. You've irritated them and they love it.
I know. I love it when I irritate my kids because then I'm like, oh, come on. I mean, like, how else are you supposed to respond?
Yeah, right.
Oh, gosh. And the last point that you bring in for the relationship skills. So far we covered 1, calm yourself in the storm. 2 is listen to understand. 3 is switch out of defensiveness. 4 is balance 5 positives for one negative. And the last point, the fifth point, is repair the hurts.
Right.
And that's tough.
It can be
On any
really, here's where, let's go back to something you said earlier, Lonnie, about sometimes it's really hard to admit mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing. There's a difference between intention and impact. I may never, in fact, I know I don't ever intend to be hurtful. I know that. I mean, I live my life with a lot of diligence around that. I also know that I hurt people. Not because I intend to, but because there's a difference between my intentions and sometimes how those land with someone else. Or maybe I didn't notice and I unintentionally hurt someone. It's very important to be able to understand the impact that you've had on another person. We'll go back to I took that emergency phone call. You know what kind of work I do. You want me to be good at my job, and I help support this family. How can you be critical of me for being late to pick up the kids? We're going back to that example for a moment, right?
Right.
The intention is that I want to make sure I can continue to financially support this family. The impact when I took that call is I really disadvantaged my co-parent, and now their plans that were going from the 5 o'clock pickup on have just been cascaded forward. They might have actually missed an important appointment that they're now financially responsible for. Maybe they were going to see their therapist and there's a no cancellation fee for not attending. Those downstream effects are on us, regardless of our intention. So if there's repair to be made, I come to you and you go, look, this caused me to miss my therapy appointment, which I will now be financially responsible for. I'm going to say to you, oh my gosh, no, I need to help with that. I am so sorry that my doing this impacted you in that way and has now caused that downstream impact. Now, it may not always be that tidy or clear what the downstream impact is, but I'm still going to take responsibility for it and own my part of the repair. What can I do? What would be helpful? Is there something that you need from me that will repair this? Because guess what? You matter to me. I might not love you. I might not even like you, but you're my co-parent, right? You're the person, and we're talking about co-parents. Of course, if you're my step couple, my partner in a new step couple, I really care that you feel like I completely bailed on our dinner plans to go to my daughter's cheerleading tryouts that I found out about last minute. You're expecting us to be on a date. I call you last minute and say, she made the cut. I'm heading over to the high school for cheerleading tryouts. Sit there like chopped liver, because that's what the impact is. The impact to my partner who is waiting for a luscious dinner date is that they feel like they were dropped like a hotcake. I better repair that. I better realize the impact, even though it's the right decision. It was the right decision to go to cheerleading tryouts. It doesn't change. It has an impact. Is that what I'm saying?
Right. And then I know too, in terms of these 5 interpersonal relationship skills, and with a step parent, it translates into what you're talking about, an insider and an outsider.
Right. That's
how that new partner can a lot of times feel as an outsider, because it's a tough, like you mentioned in the book, it's tough when you're the parent with the kids and you're trying to balance the needs and attentions of the kids versus your new partner.
Right. That's exactly right. When you've got that 14-year-old who's acting up at home, let's just fast forward to we're now spending a lot of time together, me, my new beloved, and my 14-year-old, and my 14-year-old's being a shit. Because
as they often are.
Because that can happen. That creates what we call a stuck insider. That parent in between the two really important people to them is stuck inside a rock in a hard place. That feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here. I can only do the best I can. And that's why step family is complicated, and it's not for the faint of heart. And that's why Patricia Papernow, wonderful, wonderful international step family expert, she and I wrote this book. She spent 30 years researching and working with step families, much the way I did with co-parenting. So
Okay.
together we have the whole arc.
Yes,
Co-parenting
it's
in the
perfect.
step family, and she's like step family, boom. So
Wow, this is a perfect meeting of two great minds.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, I noticed too, it goes into what one of the suggestions in your book was waiting at least 4 to 6 months before even thinking of introducing the
Yes.
kids to a new partner. Because you talk about how about, especially in the beginning, you're in this heady love infatuation stage.
Right.
So you want to take your time. You
Right.
want to take your time and make sure that once you get past that initial lust-filled romance, that you have something tangible. And so to wait 4 or 6 months at the minimum. And again, then you talk about how this is one thing I like too. And you talk about how a lot of times we're so in love, we're excited, we want to push. We want to push this relationship onto our kids, but we really have to step back and be cognizant of our kids' reactions and not force it upon them.
Right. Right. Don't you wish that your kids are as excited about you falling in love as
Yeah.
you are? And here's the deal. That is so rare. It, in fact, almost never happens. Almost never. Let me repeat that. So for children, especially, yeah, young children, but honestly, our adult children have many of the same issues their younger age mates have, which is they find it disconcerting. They feel like you're changing. They feel like you're switching loyalties. They feel like they're going to get less of you. There's all kinds of responses that kids have that we need to understand, that as excited as we are, they feel like they're losing. They don't
Yeah,
feel like they're gaining. They did not choose this person, right? They
right.
just did not. And here's the thing, delightful 4-year-olds, let's just take a delightful 4-year-old, because I could hear the parents in the background going, well, my 4-year-old loves my new girlfriend or my new boyfriend, right? Yes, of
Right.
course, it's called the honeymoon. So 4-year-olds love that you have another adult in your life who wants to pay attention to them. That wears off. Here's the other thing, that 4-year-old goes home and talks to their other parent, and their other parent is hands on hips. What do you mean you've brought another adult into our 4-year-old's life and they're painting her toenails? And now we've got a co-parenting conflict
Right.
initiated because we've started too soon, too fast, too much, in a way that people end up feeling disrespected. So it's complicated. It's
True.
important that we slow down. We go step by step. We call it stepwise for a reason, because there's lots of landmines and they're inadvertent and nobody wants to step on it, but they're right there for the stepping.
And that's it. Speaking of introducing the new partner to the children, you also bring up a really good point where make sure you give your co-parent the heads up first. Never have it come from the children.
Right.
Because I think people don't realize, for one thing, it's a little bit disrespectful as a parent to hear it from your kids. Not only that, our children are so smart and so intuitive. They're going to feel that reaction if that other co-parent isn't happy or surprised or shocked. And so the kids are being placed in the middle inadvertently of like you said, a co-parenting conflict.
Exactly. Oftentimes we don't want to tell our co-parent about a new romantic partner for a couple of reasons. And they're almost all adult oriented. They don't deserve to know. It's my personal life. It's none of their business. Like we've heard all of those adult
Business.
statements, right? And this has nothing to do. Of course, it's none of their business. Of course, all of those things are true on an adult level. But on the parenting level, on co-parenting level, as a parenting team, they need to know so that we can protect the kids from any potential emotional reaction that our co-parent may have. And if we know that our co-parent is just going to lose their minds when they find out that I'm actually dating the person they suspected I was having an affair with, but I
Oh,
denied it through my entire marriage, right? So these are the
right.
complicated stories we weave, right? If we
Well, that's
already
when they come to you, Karen.
well, and I welcome that, because that needs to be unpacked. There's a
Yeah.
good example of why we don't have children carrying that information through the front door. because the level of emotional impact that kids now feel, they feel responsible for what they just did to their other parent. I did that by saying something. I'm responsible. That's nonsense. Children should never feel that. The other is, otherwise they feel like they need to keep a secret. And children should never be asked to keep a secret from either of their parents. That's actually dangerous over time if kids feel like they need to keep secrets.
And that's one thing I like your book, because it gives guidance to the parent about, okay, when you're introducing your significant other to your other co-parent, it's not as if you have to provide, okay, first, middle, last name, date of birth,
Right.
how many people are in their family. Like, you give people advice about what to share at certain points in time and how much as the
Exactly.
relationship progresses. Then
Exactly.
you get a little bit more. And so I think that's really helpful and instructive for people maybe kind of feeling overwhelmed, like, oh no, I've got to tell my co-parent, and then I've got to provide them like with 5 information about this person that maybe they don't need to know, because maybe
Not
all they
yet.
need to know is just the first name.
Exactly. And here's the deal. We're not going to be, taking the kids away on vacation together in month 3 of our dating relationship. Or if we're thinking about that and you're listening to Lonnie and I right now, I want you to rethink that and please call me, because
Yes.
that is going to do a couple of things. One is you're going to regret it. Number 2, it's really putting kids in a situation they're not ready for, they'll be extraordinarily uncomfortable with, but it's going to freak out a co-parent. And, frankly, reasonably so. Put that shoe on the other foot.
Yeah.
Your co-parent has brought another adult and they're now traveling with your children away on a vacation with less than 3 months and haven't had any conversations. You're not going to be happy. It doesn't feel responsible. And your kids are the single most important thing to be responsible to.
One thing I liked, and you always bring these really good examples to kind of help people kind of adjust their thinking. One good example that you brought in terms of like the, being a parent and forcing almost this new partner on your kid, you say, imagine if your child had a best friend. And your child said, okay, my best friend is going to come over every afternoon. They're going to sleep over on the weekends, and then they're going on a trip with us to Disneyland. How would you as a parent feel? Wouldn't you feel overwhelmed? And then you say, that's how your child is feeling.
Right.
So step back.
Step
Like,
back.
that was so powerful.
Yeah, it's so true. Relationships have to be built. And there's no light switch on relationships. And the fact that I've fallen in love with someone does not cause a light switch to go off for my children.
Right.
And the older children are, the more time they need to become familiar with and to build a relationship with the new adult. Keep in mind, in particular, preteens, early teens, and middle teens have absolutely no interest in an additional parent. They already feel like they have too many parents most of the time. So they're trying to get rid of parents.
I have too many parents. I've got my mom and my dad. Enough.
Yeah, enough already. And so if you bring in a partner who now thinks or believes or has some concept that they're going to operate as a parent, there's one of those landmines. It doesn't work.
And that's one thing too. There's so many good things that I love about this book, is that it also tells, for one, it gives instructions, not instructions, it gives advice, it gives suggestions about
Guidance.
when to introduce your child to your partner, like after how many months, and the next step is, okay, then maybe plan a weekend outing. Then after so much time, plan that, introduce the 2 kids to each other if your partner has kids. Then maybe at this next stage, after this certain amount of time, introduce maybe the longer vacations. But, and this part is really important too, is that you also tell parents what to look for in terms of your kids' responses at certain ages. So you as a parent can be aware, if my kid is responding this way, this is what it means about how they feel about my new partner.
Right. And the impact that adult is having on our relationship, our parent-child relationship, that's the critical piece. Whether they like or don't like that new person is probably not even assessed as much as, I'm scared that I'm losing you to Tyler or Evelyn or whoever it is, I'm afraid of how different you behave around them than when you used to just be my dad or you used to just
Yeah.
be my mom. And that's what's really unsettling for children. That's hard to describe to the parent who's in love, because we are different. You know, it's been 22 years apparently, Lonnie, since you fell in love with your husband, but you've watched many people in your life how they can start dressing different, or they have a new hairstyle, or they carry different handbags because they're in love. They're
Right.
doing this thing. And for kids, it's like, where's my mom? What have you done with her? Or where's my dad? What have you done with him? Right? So we've got to
Right.
be aware of all these more subtle impacts for kids and how it just feels like loss. It doesn't feel like a gain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not happy or exciting. It's like, wow, now what? Yeah.
It takes me back to when I was I was a teenager, and my mom would introduce her significant other to me, and I was just the most absolute brat and mean and rude to her boyfriend because he was the time she spent with him means it was less time with me. I
Beautiful.
didn't get her attention. And I love how you talk about in the book, especially girls, right? You'll have your daughter being sullen and just grumpy and just retreating. And instead of accusing your daughter, like, why are you being such a brat? Why are you being so mean to Jim? Slowing down and telling your daughter, wow, or even your son, I see something is really bothering you. Why don't you talk to me about it?
Right. And what do we need to do? Maybe we need more time together. Maybe we need to slow down a little bit with Jim. Here's the thing. Children do want their parents to be happy. They really
Yes.
do. And I will tell you, I certainly saw that with my own kids in time. They want us to be happy. They don't want it at the cost of their own sense of security, or at the cost of having someone shoved down their throat. So, kind of basically forced on them that every dinner hour now includes Jim, or every dinner hour now includes something. It's like, just slow down. Step family, when it works, is amazing. And there are lots of successful step families out there. And so for those people who are listening who know of those step families, that is wonderful and it's worth it. It's just complicated. And so learning the steps and learning how to do them in a stepwise fashion is what's going to lead to that successful, thriving step family. We kind of want to avoid those pitfalls if we can. Right?
And I think also a good point to recognize too is that, like, reassuring your child's sense of security can be, well, instead of Jim coming over this Saturday night, how about we just do something just us? Go see a movie, play a board game together, something like that. Because sometimes your kids just really want that one-on-one time with you, and they may get resentful that Jim has to be there every weekend.
Right. That's exactly right. So
Yeah.
most
And
of the
that's
time,
yeah.
most of the time when kids really act up around new adults, it's really that they're scared. At the end of the day, they're scared and they're feeling more lost. Because remember, for kids, even though you may feel completely over your divorce, those kids are reminded every transition that
Yeah.
their parents got divorced. They don't get to forget
Yeah.
that original transition and restructuring of their original family, because they live it every week, maybe multiple times a week, depending on the number of transitions. So staying empathetic to what we're asking of our children, understanding them, really makes a huge difference. And then talking with our beloveds about those complications. Because if I'm dating someone who doesn't have children and I have 2 children and 3 grandchildren, they're going to need to understand what that means in my life. And they've got to honestly assess, do I want to be in love with someone who has these other tethers, who have these other demands, whose life will be informed by a lot of requirements that I'm not a part of? That's a question. Am I cut out for step family?
And here's another point too that you mentioned too, when you're saying that as an adult, we're over it, we're done with the divorce, but children inside are secretly hoping that one day their parents will reconcile.
Sometimes that's exactly right, especially if there wasn't a lot of abuse or drama
Right.
and trauma and all that stuff. Yeah, those kids are thinking, but as soon as that new partner comes on the scene, it's like, shit, that closes that door, I guess. I don't want Jim around.
And
Yeah,
it's interesting what you said too when you're talking about, so in this, in like Jim, right? So Jim has, if Jim has no kids, Jim has to really think about, am I really cut out for this?
exactly. Am I cut out for a step family? Because it's complicated. And if Jim does have children and you have children, or the two of us both have our own children, it's not like it's people have a fantasy that it's easier. It's
Yeah.
actually double the trouble, because now we have two co-parents, right? We have two sets of children, or a child in each situation, who are used to things being done a certain way. One of my favorite stories in the book is when Patricia shares the story with her stepdaughter when she made her a tuna fish sandwich. And I don't know if you remember that one, Lonnie, but so Patricia's thinking to herself, I'm going to make the girls tuna fish sandwich, her own daughter and her stepdaughter. And so
Mhm.
she's got the wheat bread out, and she's got the low fat mayo, and she's got the celery and all the goodies that she's going to put in the tuna fish, makes it and sets it in front of her stepdaughter. Her stepdaughter goes, "What is this?"
Right.
Right. And her stepdaughter had always been used to sandwiches being made with white bread, full on mayonnaise, never anything green in it. These kinds of things where you think you're doing the right thing. And kids are really used to something different. We don't put sprinkles on our Christmas cookies in our family. What are you doing? Like, this is the kind of stuff, the differences from two families, original families, that have to figure out how to marry, how to bring together two different cultures, two different family cultures, let alone potentially, literally two different, cultural heritages, right? Or
Right.
religious backgrounds or whatever else. So it's complicated. It's
And
challenging.
I think it's also too, people need to be forgiving of themselves in the sense that if it doesn't work out, um, to not carry any type of blame or shame about that.
Right. You
And I,
can't know what you don't know, right? My
right.
I have a former partner who used to laugh because my children were teenagers when we got together. And I'll never forget the day someone who had children said to my former partner, "Well, you knew she had children." And my former partner reacted like without even taking a breath. And I didn't know what it meant that she had children. Like, there was no way to know the myriad of impacts that two teenagers were going to have on family life. There was
Right.
no way to know, right? So if you get into it, you've given it your best, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is just causing so much strife for both of us. And honestly, I'm not cut out for this. This isn't really what I want in my life. Then again, responsible with repair, with honoring relationships. You're absolutely right, Lonnie. It's important to be able to step away, be respectful, be kind, right? End those relationships responsibly. If you've been in children's lives for any length of time, say goodbye, right? Don't make promises you can't keep. Oh, I'll see you every weekend. No, don't say that unless you've really worked that out, right? Those kind of things.
Well, at least people can have an idea of what they're getting into now if they read your book.
Right, right.
The Step
And
Family Handbook.
I sure don't want to dissuade parents and people who fall in love with parents from going forward. I really want to invite them into destroying it in a stepwise fashion.
I think, and then thank you for saying that too. And I think that's why with this book, you can definitely help, you can help parents and their new partners navigate the ups and downs, the turbulence, the bumpiness they're going to encounter, and provide them the tools. That's what
Right,
this book is. It's a tool, it's a resource. Hey, you've met someone new. How do I introduce them to my kids? When's a good amount of time to introduce them to their kids? Informing your co-parent about this new relationship.
mhm,
What to look for in terms of reactions from the kids, given their different ages, even kids who are now adults.
right.
They have reactions too.
That's
And
right.
discipline.
Oh,
You see your book, right? And in the first family, people fight about, I think it was kids and money, but most of the fights are focused around financial. We're in
Right.
that step family relationship,
The
the
next
fights,
time family.
yeah, the next time family, the fights focus on the kids and the discipline.
Right. That's exactly right. Most
Yeah.
families, in original families, their biggest stressor is money. And in our next time families, the biggest stressor is disciplining kids. And
Yes.
the issue there again is, we come to a sense of family with expectations, and children and a parent come to a next time family with a whole history. So that new person coming in is just really engaging all this history that they may or may not have any conscious awareness of how that's going to impact them. Right.
Right.
So, yeah, it's important stuff.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Karen. Really enjoyed talking to you today, and especially diving into the Stepfamily Handbook. Such a great, wonderful resource out there. Please pick it up. It's available on Amazon, and essentially just Google the Stepfamily Handbook and read it. Read it if you're not even thinking about dating right now, but kind of going just so you can have that advanced roadmap of what's coming up next. And not only to the interpersonal skills, the interpersonal relationship skills that you mentioned can be applied to your current partner with your
Any
kids.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those, and so let's not forget the 3 areas that Karen is available in terms of parenting coaching. Divorce well is one bucket. The second bucket is co-parent strong. And the third bucket is stepwise.
Mhm. Beautiful. Lonnie,
Thank you
thank
so much,
you.
Karen.
Oh my gosh, it's always my pleasure. Keep
And
me
again,
posted.
yes, and contact Karen at www.karensbonnell.com or Google Karen. Did you say Karen Coach Kirkland?
Yeah, any of those words will get me. Coach Karen Kirkland, it's going to get you to me. But yeah, I look forward to hearing from anyone. Yeah, if there's anything I can do, I'm always happy to help.
Thank you so much again, Karen, for being on our show. And thank you for my listeners out there for listening to another episode of the Akiona Law Podcast, wherein we talk about the things that intersect in the areas of divorce and family law. Until next time, be well.
The information in this podcast is general advice only and should not in any respect be relied on as specific legal advice.